Welcome everyone to a joint crossover episode, The Intelligent World, Stars and Strikes, The Road to Qatar 2022. I am joined by my good friend and co-host of The Intelligent World, Chris Berry. And we have two very special guests here with us. The host of Stars and Strikes, The Road to Qatar 2022. I'll go ahead and let them introduce themselves. Ryan Deeb and Chaz Messman.
What's up, guys? My name's Ryan. I'm here with Chaz. We're really excited to be on the show today. This is actually our first crossover episode, so I know we got a lot of fun stuff to talk about today with the four of us, and it should be a good time. So I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, I can't wait to get to know you guys and get this conversation going.
Yeah, well, of course. Thank you guys for being here with us. Thank you, Chris, for being here with us when you're in Belgium right now. So much appreciation. But we love that you're here, and we love that we're going to talk about soccer, and more importantly, soccer in the United States and soccer in the world, what unites us in this beautiful game. So Ryan and Chaz, why don't you guys talk about your radio show, your podcast, and why you guys did it? What's the theme about it?
Yeah, so both of us obviously grew up as big soccer fans, especially big U.S. fans. And we kind of noticed something, that we have something of a golden generation. Chris is over in Belgium. Belgium just had their golden generation of soccer. The U.S. seemed to be having, the next step in that one. We have so many young players all over the world contributing, players in the Bundesliga, in the Premier League, doing great things that we've never seen before. And the next World Cup cycle is just about to get going. And we saw kind of COVID-19 as an opportunity to get something going and to start showing, different people who aren't maybe following the game as much as they could be, or as much as avid soccer fans do, so that they can get more interested in it, so that by the time that the World Cup does come around, they understand that we have a real team and this team can actually go places.
Yeah, well, that's awesome. I know I've definitely been listening. Chris, I think you've maybe listened to a little bit of an episode here and there, but that's one of the reasons we really wanted to cross over with you guys, is that we love that you guys are talking about this golden generation, especially for us as huge soccer fans as well. Now, the only reason that you're only seeing two of us from the Intelligent World and not a whole bunch of us is because we're the two main soccer fans from there. So I'll let Chris talk about who we are and why we love soccer so much.
Yeah. So as you guys have been following us, Intelligent World, every single podcast episode, we just seek to try to bring you a little bit more light on the world, no matter whether it's talking about soccer, or it's talking about the social media problem in the world, whatever it may be. We try to go ahead and pull a lesson that you can implement into your life and go ahead and make your life a little bit better every single day, and eventually the world a better place. So that's kind of a little bit about the podcast itself. Me and Daniel personally, I'll speak for myself first. I've been playing soccer, or what I like to call the real football. Yeah, all the other football fans, get out of here. American football fans. I've been playing my entire life since like 3 years old. I've been lucky. I've been able to play a little bit over in Italy in a couple camps, for a university a little bit too in Italy. And honestly, just being able to travel the world, I've been lucky to visit a bunch of different stadiums, World Cups. And honestly, it's just amazing seeing everyone so united. It's like, regardless of whatever is going on in the world, wars, political battles, COVID-19, everyone can come together for the love of the beautiful game. And I think it's amazing. So, it's something I really enjoy. So I'll kind of pass it back to Daniel now.
Yeah, no, of course. And for me, I know Chris definitely knows I'm not the biggest soccer fan. Soccer player, like the best one ever. Ryan has seen my skills too, and he knows. I just play because I love it.
Fun.
We had some fun. But really, it comes from the love of soccer that my dad has. He almost went pro back in El Salvador, where he's from, and he just kind of passed that passion on to me. So I love it, man. Love watching it as much as I can, and that's why we're passionate about it. And so we're super happy that you guys are here with us, Ryan and Chaz, and our audience can just kind of hear what our passion is from, and why we think that the sport is so important and impactful, specifically here in the U.S. So with that, Ryan and Chaz, I know you guys definitely talk and focus on the U.S. men's national team. So why don't we go ahead and talk about that? You guys just released your episode on giving out awards. So I'm interested in hearing a little bit more about your just thoughts on this golden generation. Just anything.
Yeah. So like you said, yesterday actually we released our our second part of our 2020 recap, which in the first part we kind of went over the summary of everything that went on, and then our second part, which we released yesterday, we're giving out our awards, for best player, best young player, best goal, this and that, our best starting 11, and I think that was Chaz and I were talking, and it was one of our favorite episodes because it was just, we got to look back at everything that's happened this year, and there's been so much crazy stuff that's happened, and this is the first time, as at least a fan of American soccer, when we were able to argue about who belongs in our best 11. In years past, it was kind of a given. We have these guys who are the best in that position, and they're undoubtedly the guy who's going to play in our best 11, who's going to start, and who's going to do best in that position. But now we have depth. We have a huge player pool of just all young, talented players, whether in Europe, they're on American soil, because we did have a lot of talented players on American soil too. And it was the first time when we kind of got to argue about, who is our best player, because we have so many now. So it was a really fun episode we released yesterday. I'd recommend checking it out because it's not just the end of our 2020 stuff, but it's looking forward to a lot of fun stuff we have in 2021 as well.
One of the cool things about hopefully this upcoming year is we're going to be able to keep following these players that we talked about throughout our last few episodes and the beginning of our show. Like Gio Reyna's rise has pretty much been documented from the start of our show. He was brand new. He was still kind of getting started and getting going with Borussia Dortmund when we first started. Now he's looking like a nailed-on starter for Dortmund and a nailed-on starter for this team going forward. And hopefully we're going to be able to meet some new players, and a guy that we're going to mention for the first time in this show. We didn't mention it all last year.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to go ahead and talk about that now, man, it's like Matthew Hoppe, man. I mean, I can't even hide that name for too long, because it's just out of nowhere this guy's come out, and he's kind of having that, as you've mentioned so many times, Chaz, the meteoric rise. Now we're talking about the meteoric rise of Matthew Hoppe. He's over at Schalke, which is known not to be the best team in the Bundesliga, but he's kind of bringing it to the next level. He has 5 goals in 7 appearances.
Last 3 games.
Last 3 games. Okay, 5 goals in his last 3 games, and that's huge for a guy. I think he's 19.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So he's just I think the epitome of what our show is talking about. He's an example of just one of the members of this golden generation that kind of rises, makes the European stage his platform as an American to, bring ultimately our United States men's national team player pool to the next level.
Question for you, Ryan, and also Chaz. What do you think has led to kind of this increase in golden generation we're preluding to? Do you think it's just an increase in popularity in the game itself in the United States? Is there some an ulterior motive, or what do you think has caused this?
I think it has to do with the mass popularity of the game, and definitely the whole globalization of information and social media, the big TV contracts. So players like us, when we were growing up, we got to watch the best players in the world playing in the Premier League. Like, you can't tell I'm wearing a Liverpool shirt. I mean, kids 10 years older than me, they probably weren't watching Steven Gerrard and all those players. They weren't seeing Messi, Ronaldo do what they do. And these guys, they're seeing it. And then you have guys like Landon Donovan and Clint Dempsey to look up to as well. Clint Dempsey was one of the first probably trailblazing American to be successful and be very impactful in the Premier League at like a global stage.
Yeah, and it also goes back to, even in more recent years, we've had the likes of Christian Pulisic. He was probably the biggest name that we've had, and he's one of those players that just had a huge impact overseas, and he's a young guy too. And after the most recent catastrophe being our not qualifying for the World Cup, we have a talented player overseas such as Christian Pulisic, and the gears start turning. We start seeing we missed out on this huge opportunity at the World Cup, but we could produce players like this. It's time we start taking this more seriously, and it's time that we start, becoming a part of this global game. We're one of the only countries that hasn't really taken this game seriously in recent years, but we clearly have the potential to produce great talent, to produce talent that could compete overseas. So if anything, Christian Pulisic could have been kind of the spark to kind of start getting the gears turning and start saying, look, we can be a global powerhouse of football.
That's a fair point. And he definitely was a spark. And something just to go off of what you were saying is now European clubs, South American clubs, they're not afraid to take a chance on a young American player. In the past, they might have been afraid. Because you've seen the Freddie Adus, all these guys that had all this hype but didn't really pan out. Now they're guys that are starting to pan out when they're 14, 15 years old. These European clubs may say, you know what, you can come join our academy. And those players, when they join it, like a Matthew Hoppe, who came, another Southern California boy, shout out SoCal Soccer. But yeah, they're taking chances on it. And they're I mean, I don't even know how to like describe it, but they're making their money in investments worth it.
So that's actually something. Oh, sorry, Chris, go ahead.
No, it's all good. I think it might have been something you were going to move on to. But I think it's really interesting seeing, in the past, it was always a stigma. Oh, American players, like, I don't know. We've had some flops in the past. Versus now, it's kind of bringing people together. And now, I guess you can say it's also, I'd feel as a whole, as you were mentioning, Chaz, inception of social media and it kind of being more widespread information. It's interesting seeing how the American culture as a whole is also being more opened to, European culture with soccer and just everything going on there. So I think it's just an interesting thing, which leads to a whole different topic in social media. But regardless, I thought it was cool.
Yeah, I mean, just kind of going off of that, what the point I was going to bring is more of maybe a question, maybe more of a philosophical question in the sense of why haven't our players been taken seriously in the past? And I mean, just kind of going off of like academies in other countries really honing their players very well. And for some reason here in the United States, it's either not taken seriously or we just don't see those results as often as we do in other countries. So something that Taylor Twellman said a few years ago, maybe a few months after we failed to qualify for the World Cup, was investing in these academies, investing in these young players, and making it less expensive. Here, especially in Southern California, how expensive it is to kind of join these little amateur leagues or something like that. Do you think that's a driving force if we actually make it more well-known, make it more popular, and invest money into these academies? Do you think that can really result in a better growth of American talent?
Yeah, for sure. I think that's something that we're seeing in more recent years, especially this year with the team, with the Philadelphia Union. I mean, they have one of the strongest academies in Major League Soccer, and they've proven that this season by winning the Supporters Shield with a primarily domestic made team. And it's teams like them, Real Salt Lake, FC Dallas, they have really strong academies, and they're kind of coming to the forefront of MLS and saying, look, it's not all about investing into these big name players just so that you could have an expensive jersey on your back, sell millions in jerseys, bring in Zlatan, bring in Chicharito. It's not about that, because we see with the LA Galaxy what's happening over there. We saw what happened with New York City FC. Neither of these teams have been successful. And that's what overseas, that's what they look at us as. They look at us as the retirement league. And it's time that teams like Philadelphia Union, FC Dallas, we have to switch this culture over to being, academy grown, so that we're not retirement league. We have young players playing for us. It's not all about spending our money on these big name players. I think the culture switch has to be more towards spending that money that we would spend on Zlatan, now putting that into the academy, making it more affordable, and making it so that we have the best coaches, best training for our young players.
I think the academy system is going to prove to be the way that these MLS clubs have sustained success. Look at the Seattle Sounders, Jordan Morris, Christian Roldan, the two pillars of their franchise right now. Both of them are homegrown players. Obviously, Jordan Morris went to Stanford for a few years, so left the Seattle area, came back. Now it's over in Swansea. We haven't gotten to talk about that, so that'll definitely be a topic that we mention in future episodes and talk about. But I think the next step is for these academies to be branching out and to find players from across the country, because there's only 30 something academy, MLS teams in the MLS teams that there are, and they have their academies. The United States is a big country. It's unrealistic to say that someone from, let's say Nevada is going to drive all the way down to Southern California or up to Salt Lake City every single day for practice when it's just unrealistic. And they need to be able to play with the best players and develop their talent and stuff. So I think we need to find a way to more widespread their academies, whether they start to do something like Salt Lake did, where they have an academy in Arizona, where they just have more spots where they do the academy system to develop players and to have them practicing day in and day out with the top players in their area.
So I think this is almost sorry, Chris, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I think this is branching off into our next big topic of, just soccer in the United States, in the culture of the United States. But before we get there, I think this kind of branches off is, what if we were to do a second division like we see in almost every other established nation? If we can get it to where it's like academy, second division, top flight, do you think that would support better growth? But even to get there, we would still need more funneling of, just investments in that sort of thing.
I think that would definitely help with the development of players. And we'd see that with the national team. The problem is the investment that all these MLS owners made. They thought, and their investment came with the thinking that they were going to have the top TV contracts, that they were going to be in MLS, that they weren't going to have to go down to the second division. That's something we don't have in any American sport. AAA is not the Major League Baseball. You don't see AAA on television. AAA owners are not billionaires. So there'd have to be a complete buy-in from every single MLS owner to even get to that point.
Yeah, definitely. That's one that I kind of wish we had, but you're right. It would kind of be really difficult to get there, but hopefully in the future. Go ahead, Chris.
No, I just think it's difficult because then you see it in other sports around the United States. I'm bad this year, but then I'll get the good pick next year. And to me, that just really disincentivizes proper, I guess you say, competition and what I'm so used to in the beautiful game amongst other leagues. So I think that it would be fantastic being able to kind of create this tiered system, because I totally get what you're saying, Chaz. Like, it does cause a problem for some of these owners, but in the same sense, like I had a friend of mine who played in like the second division, technically underneath the MLS, but there's a very small chance he'll ever make it to the MLS. So it's like, how do you go ahead and like create super talented players in the division underneath MLS then? It's, if you can go ahead and have something where they need to transition, they need to be on their top every single year to be able to do that. I think it's fantastic, because then you also look at like a business decision. If you're looking from the business side of it, I mean, if somebody really wanted to, they could purchase the lower end team and then they could rise them up through the ranks. You get MLS, huge TV contracts. Obviously, it would take a couple of years to get there. But I think as a whole, it would be very positive for the game, for its development in the United States and everything. Maybe am I wrong? Would you guys agree? Or
no, definitely. I mean, it's that's exactly what you see in Europe with all their divisions. It's having those different tiers is the incentive to keep cultivating and keep your team at the highest level. And you see in the MLS, some teams might just get too comfortable, and like you said, with the drafts and whatnot, they'll get the best pick next year. And with certain teams, they'll just when come time in the summer, they'll just buy a big name player to hopefully bring them to the next level. But if you have kind of that tier system, then it's time to start. If you sign that big name player and that doesn't work, what's your backup? Because otherwise you're going under. So it would drive teams to kind of take the whole, development process more seriously. And ultimately, I think that would have them fall back on their academies, which right now they don't really have to do, because there's no real punishment if they do fail.
Yeah. And then I guess to add on to keep the conversation going, I guess I don't really like the pick thing. And the reason why is because I think these young players get put in a position where then they cannot succeed. They get no minutes. They're just starting on the bench. We see so many players get wasted, at least in my opinion, here in the United States, when we don't see that in other countries, or we get the cream of the crop, like a Pulisic, like an Alphonso Davies, that then get taken away to Europe because they didn't I mean, what's the point in staying here in the United States when you can go over there? So I think the only way to get better as a nation is to really invest, even if it means maybe less financial gain for some of these owners, to continue to just improve just soccer here in the United States. But that leads us to our next kind of topic is what is U.S. soccer in the United States? We've seen that there's it's rising in popularity over the years, but it hasn't been taken so seriously, especially a few years ago, especially when we failed to qualify for the World Cup. So why do you think that is, and what do you kind of see soccer as being here in the U.S.? Is it so important, or is it starting to rise? I don't know. I'll leave that up to you guys.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned the disappointment of the last World Cup. And I think soccer in general, men's soccer specifically, has this negative vibe around it. And even still somewhat with all the young players that we have, there's still a little bit of this negativity, like, oh, we stink. Are we even going to make the next World Cup? A lot of people refuse to believe that we have all these young players that can actually do something in the game and that are making an impact on the highest level, because there's that almost like resentment, like, why are we not the best? We should be the best. And the reality is soccer is very different than every other sport here, because every other country, that's all they do. The best players are always just playing soccer. And the system we have in the US is really good for women, and really good for the women's game, the college game, with the opportunities that they have and the money there. But the reality is the money's in football and basketball and baseball in this country. So scholarship opportunities aren't necessarily there for soccer players. So parents are more likely to push their kids into playing the other sports, because that's where they're going to get an education. And if sports doesn't work out for them, they're more likely to be lined up for success in other fields.
Yeah, it's like in this country, it seems like soccer is almost treated as like an afterthought. Like oh, we're the best at baseball, at basketball, at football, because frankly, we're the only country that really plays those sports. But it seems like soccer, how it's treated financially, how college is treated, it's just a technicality. We have to have soccer at our school. We have to, fund this to some extent. And I think that's ultimately why, it gets so downplayed, is because we have all these other sports going on, and not as many people really care about what other countries treat as their number one. And ultimately, the world not qualifying for the World Cup, that was almost like the nail in the coffin right then. This is, we can't take this seriously. Nobody cares about this. So it's hard to say that, we're moving forward, and, we have a lot of potential moving forward, but it's about getting the American people behind it now. And I think it all comes down to our young boys proving, on the world stage, in 2022 or 2026, what we have going for us. So I think these next few years of American soccer are going to be huge for growing the sport.
And one thing that we have to mention, and I've kind of been thinking about this, soccer has been growing at a pretty good rate. If 2026, when the World Cup is on home soil, goes well, and the US are competitive, and not just competitive, but make a run at the title, I wouldn't be shocked if soccer overtakes hockey in terms of popularity. Just with all the amount of young kids that are playing soccer, now that they're seeing players that they can look up to, I think it'll keep them playing soccer as opposed to switching over to baseball, to football, and other things. More kids will more likely continue their development and continue their growth and continue their love for the game. And I think it'll just eventually trickle down all the way. And I wouldn't be shocked if it overtakes hockey in the next 10 years.
Absolutely agree. I think that as a whole, I think you brought up a really good point, Ryan. It's just a matter of United States as a whole, like the people kind of getting behind it and understanding it. And that just takes time. I think it's not going to be like all of a sudden one day, oh, okay, American football, baseball. No, it's not going to just disappear, but it's a matter of rising in popularity. And I think, Chaz, to kind of go further on your thing, a success at the 2022, the 2026 World Cup, that would drastically change the popularity as a whole throughout the entire country. And it's really, I think it's the popularity has been drastically rising over the past like 10 years. And now we're starting to see some of the fruits of that labor with our Christian Pulisic, and all the players that are kind of coming through now. So to me, it's just kind of interesting to see as it continues to progress, as the United States might put in different infrastructure as it grows, as it becomes a bigger sport in regards to popularity. I don't know. We'll see. It's interesting to watch.
Yeah, hopefully it will continue to grow, especially after success, like we've been saying. And most importantly, I think the saddest part, especially to people like us, is as the most beautiful game in the world, as the most popular game in the world, as the number one game in the world, why can't we be, one of the number ones? But with that, I think, should we jump to our break now, guys?
Perfect.
Sounds good. So join us after the break.
Dondoka kipande rusha kichupa akili zishaniruka kampani misitaki kwanza mina kulabati basije kutudhihaki.
All right, thanks for joining us back after that break. We're gonna shift the conversation more towards soccer on not just the actual development of the game on United States soil, but what the United States is missing compared to the international level of the game. Because if you go to a football match in Europe or in South America, it just seems like a totally different field, no matter what team or what players you're watching. It's just a totally different atmosphere than what we have in America. And I had the opportunity to experience that when I was studying in the Czech Republic, and obviously I was in Prague, the biggest city in the Czech Republic, but the football quality, the standard of football wasn't all that. I mean, I'll admit, like, I love Sparta. That's my team. I lived, a block away from the stadium, and it was so much fun going to the games. But when I'm back home watching an LA Galaxy game, I'd say MLS is probably a tier above Czech soccer. But the main difference was the passion, the atmosphere when you go to the games. Nowhere in America, I think you could find somewhere like that. And it was really telling to me, we're not watching a team that's all that, we're not watching 5-star football, but the fans are still, ripping their shirts off in 20-degree weather, throwing the flares out, screaming, cussing out the other team, no matter who it is. And it's like something is missing in America, that we don't have this kind of passion that even the smallest teams in Europe do. And it begs the question, if you guys have ever experienced something like that, and what is the reason for that?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I know we've kind of been chatting a little bit about it in the past. I've been lucky to kind of travel around to a lot of different stadiums around the world, primarily in Europe. But to me, what was, like, I guess say the defining factor for just my understanding of, like, oh my God, like, this is so much more than just like a game, was when I went to the World Cup. I mean, like, you have people from all over. I mean, South America, Asia, Europe, America, wherever it is, like, everyone's coming together. And even though there might be conflicts here, conflicts there, I mean, everyone comes and just embraces the love of the beautiful game. I mean, it's really terrible, all the stuff that, goes on in general, wars, hate, discrimination. Yet to me, it's really beautiful to see people, as you're kind of saying, right, like, come together within this. So to me, I just think it's awesome to see something where people can put differences aside and just continue to love, rather than focusing on all the stuff that goes on outside. It's like, okay, when we're all in the stadium together, like, we're kind of like this family united in the beautiful game of, billions of people across the world. And then once the event goes on the pitch, it's on the pitch. And then as you go off, it's different, but it's awesome to see that nonetheless.
Yeah. I mean, just kind of adding on to that, Chris and I had the opportunity to go to Spain a few years back when we were in high school, and we went to Spain. We were in Barcelona. We bought a ball there, and I mean, it was just so insane. It was my first time going out of the country. It was so insane to connect with Spaniards with one thing, and that was just the ball. I mean, Chaz and Ryan, it was crazy, man. We were. I remember it very clearly. Twice we were at a gas station or something like that, right, Chris?
Yeah.
A few kids came up to us, and we just started playing the game. And all of a sudden, more kids from our high school started to come and kind of join in the game. And it was one of the best experiences of my life. And a few days later, we did it again, another little pit stop. But it's such a popular sport, and I just think it's something that really brings us together despite everything else that's going on in the world. And that passion, you can see it when it's just 1v1 or one person with a ball, or if it's on the pitch with thousands of supporters. And especially now during this pandemic, for us all to continue to be supporting this sport that we love, it just shows us how much more of it's way more than just a sport. It really is something that it's a culture, something that we live. And I really hope that we can foster that more here in the United States.
Yeah, I think going off of what you're saying, the one thing that it is that I think it isn't in the United States is around the world, it's a language. You know, you don't have to speak verbally, but if you walk up to the gas station, you have a ball and you pass a ball to someone, they know what you're saying. You know, they know what you're trying to do with them. If I went to an American gas station and passed the ball to somebody, they'd be like, dude, what's up with that? I don't speak this language. I like football. I like basketball. But internationally, football is just the universal language, just something that you could share with one another without, you put your differences aside. If I don't speak Spanish, if I don't speak German, if I have a football in my hands and we can play something, that's a bond in itself that I don't think you could do that anywhere in America.
Yeah.
One thing go for it.
No. I was actually going to go to you. So perfect.
Oh, I was going to say, I think COVID-19 all but solidifies what all you guys have been saying and how much it means to people. And that's not even just playing on the pitch, watching their teams and how much passion and support they have and what it means to them. When the Bundesliga came back, that was the first major sports league around the world to come back. And it's something definitely I felt. I watched every single game. I got up early in the morning to watch it because it's something that I needed. It's something I feel that a lot of people needed. There were a lot of people I knew from, that I live with and stuff that are not soccer fans whatsoever. And they became the biggest soccer fans because of COVID, because they finally got to see what it's like and how it can be exciting and how it can connect people. Like I said, my favorite team, Liverpool, won the title during COVID. And outside the stadium, like 30,000 people gathered, setting off flares and stuff. And while that probably wasn't the smartest decision based on everything and all the health risks that's going on in the world, you could see how much that meant to the people of the city and how much that meant to the fans, that they needed to be able to share that with the people around them.
There's not going to be any title parades in Liverpool this year, huh?
We'll see.
Hey, and deservedly so. Deservedly so. I'm just butthurt because I'm an Arsenal fan. Really quick though, Chris Berry does have to leave us, and I will say thank you so much, Chris. Ryan, Chaz, and I will stay on for a few more minutes and finish up this podcast. But thank you, man. Love you,
thank you, Chris. It was great talking to you, man. We'll talk soon.
Of course, great meeting you too, and wish you all the best. See you soon.
Have a good one.
Peace.
All right. So yeah, what we were saying is just, Chaz, honestly, that's the best story I've heard in a long time. That people who didn't like soccer, who weren't super avid, followers, suddenly became so because of lockdown. I really think that that's such an important thing, because like I was saying, it means so much more. Not only is it a language, it's almost like this, I don't want to say religion, but it kind of is, because it's just so passionate. I mean, just anyone, you just grab anyone from around the world and they'll tell you, how much it means to them. But yeah, go ahead.
I mean, you go for it, Ryan.
Sorry, or whoever.
I remember that time post lockdown that you're talking about, Chaz, and that was like the first time that people were getting like gassed up about Bundesliga football, and it's like, it's obviously in Europe's top 5 leagues and it's entertaining stuff, but like, everybody was getting hyped around Bundesliga soccer, and it was so cool to see because it was one of the first sports that came back, and I think I even saw like the news talking about it and stuff. I'm like, yeah. Local news talking about German soccer, like this is great.
And to kind of almost ping it back to our show, 3 guys I'd say are part of the biggest reason that American interest in it is because we saw Gio Reyna, who was 17 at the time, killing it in that Bundesliga. Weston McKennie was carrying Schalke at the time. So we are seeing guys that we can relate to that are from the same places, speak the same language as us. And they're doing it at the top stage. There's someone for them to cheer for. There's a team for them to root for, and people found a love for it.
Yeah, and I think that's ultimately what's going to drive people to become passionate for this game in the future, and it's something that we lack currently compared to other countries, is kind of the history. And we have historical, famous American players, but there's been very few occasions when the young generation has been able to relate to players abroad. And this is kind of the first time, I can look to someone, I know people across the country, I could look to Weston McKennie and say, that is somebody exactly like me. And he came from Texas, probably very, very similar to what I grew up as. And he's at one of the biggest clubs in Europe. And I think this is something that Europeans and South Americans have been able to do for generations, is look at someone on TV and say, he's like me, he's one of me. And that's inspiring. It's not something that we've had for so long. And now hopefully that's, as we get more players like that, it's going to be what drives our passion, because we're going to have this connection to players and to teams, and eventually we'll start building this history.
Yeah, definitely. So if you guys have a few more minutes, I would love to just kind of not summarize just yet, but just kind of say, us as the intelligent world, we love that you guys, that we were able to talk about the main theme of how soccer is part of the culture of the US and then, worldwide. But now that we've touched on that stuff, I would really love if we can spend a few minutes and just kind of extend your guys' conversation of just US soccer and how exciting it is. So if I may be so bold as to say that I very do much agree with you guys in the sense of Gio Reyna is absolutely killing it right now, and to me looks like the golden prospect. Now, where I would want to say is, for me, my MVP is actually Weston McKennie, and not just because of recent events like this weekend with Juventus, but just like actually you guys were saying, of his attitude on and off the pitch. He knows what he's about, and I think he will be the greatest leader, or at least I expect him to be one of the greatest leaders that we've had in a while. Any thoughts? Is that okay if we extend the conversation for a bit?
Absolutely. And it's interesting that you mentioned Weston McKennie's leadership and his attitude, because this kind of goes off a conversation that we were having in the last episode that we came out yesterday, is both of us gave Weston McKennie as our 2020 Men's Player of the Year. And something that I said was, Weston McKennie is shaping himself into being the next captain of the U.S. national team. So I can completely agree on what you're saying because of his temperament, his attitude, and the way he carries himself.
Yeah, and I think this is it's something that I always look back at, was his goal against Barcelona, because that is the pinnacle of who Weston McKennie is. And it's I talk about this all the time with Chaz, and it's one of the, probably we agree, it's one of the most influential goals that an American has maybe scored ever for our United States men's national team history. Maybe not on the international level, but still, it's just the way, the goal he scored, the way he scored it, and then what he did after that, the celebration, just the way he carries himself is just so powerful, and it speaks to Americans everywhere, because he's playing on the same field with Cristiano Ronaldo, with Giorgio Chiellini, Andrea Bonucci, and these are like the best players in recent history. And meanwhile, Weston McKennie is strutting his stuff, holding his head up high with players on the field like that. And he's an American from Texas, and it's nothing short of inspiring for a guy like that to look that cool on the pitch, scoring a goal that good. And for an American, that's the coolest thing ever.
Something that would link this back, to the whole episode that we've had today, is the casual sports fan who isn't even a soccer fan knows what FC Barcelona is. They know who Cristiano Ronaldo is. Then when they hear, oh, the U.S. have a player that plays with Ronaldo, they have Serginho Dest who plays for Barcelona, it might make them, and in fact, it does make them take soccer in the U.S. and American soccer more seriously. Exactly. So therefore, it grows the game more fans for the team, and that growth just continues to keep that ball moving and rolling.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think, again, it's just the fact, I would agree with you guys 100% that was one of the most influential goals, not just because of what had just happened previously in the December camp. Again, 0-0 draw with Wales to me was exciting because that was the first time where I said, I can take these guys seriously again. And I am truly invested once more. And then, after beating all these other teams, especially El Salvador, where my family's, where half of my family's from, I thought that was really awesome that they were able to cream them. And it's just so cool to see that now they're growing just so much more. And it's just so exciting to kind of see these kids our age, maybe a little older, pave a name for themselves and pave some respect for this country and what we can produce.
We got another friendly coming up against the biggest red flag in recent American soccer history. The end of the month, we're playing Trinidad and Tobago. The Stars and Strikes team will be back, halftime post-game shows like we always do. But it's going to be a domestic team again. And they have a chance to prove, again, against, like I said, the biggest disappointment that we've had in years, to show that this is a different team and that this team is ready to take the next step to not only go to a World Cup, but compete at a World Cup and try and win the thing and make a run at it.
Yeah, and what makes me most excited for this game coming up is that it's, obviously it's going to be played as almost like a grudge match, but I feel like this team that we have now is miles ahead of the team that played them before the World Cup in qualifying. Mm-hmm. And it's, if we are able to put out, a dominant display, a confident display, it's almost like we don't have to worry about what happened. We can move forward now. We've proven that we are past that, and we can move forward as the powerhouse nation that we're trying to become. There's no more conversation about, oh, we lost to Trinidad and Tobago, because this match, even though if it's a friendly, it could hold the significance, at least mentally, to say that we're better than that. We should have done better then, and now we're back. We're going to do better now moving forward, and we mean business now.
Very, very well said. So I think with that, should we summarize our show, guys, and start wrapping things up?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. So thank you so much for joining us, both of you, Chaz Messman, Ryan Deeb, the Stars and Strike podcast. Thank you guys so much for being part of this show. I hope you guys enjoyed your time with us, and I hope that we can do it again. Talk about
it was awesome. Thank you so much for having us. It was a really fun show today.
Of course. So anything you guys want to shout out before we kind of wrap up?
Chaz,
go check out the YouTube channel.
New episode.
Yeah, plug it.
Let's check us out on YouTube, and then make sure to check out, like I mentioned earlier, that episode that we released yesterday, our recap part 2 of 2020, where we're handing out all of our awards, biggest disappointment, best goal, best domestic player, best young player, all that good stuff. It's a really fun episode. A lot of little debates, a lot of disagreements, but also a lot of fun agreements as well. So make sure to check that out. Episodes 1 through 6 as well are out. So yeah, check us out. Thank you so much again for having us here today. It was a great time.
Thanks, Daniel.
Well, it was a lot of fun. Check us out. Subscribe. Thank you so much for joining us. The Intelligent World, Stars and Strikes, the Road to Qatar 2022. Thanks again. This week we used 2 songs. The first, Girl with Kaleidoscope Eyes by Pachyderm, taken responsibly from the freemusicarchive.org, and UMRAA Master by Dutchnelsar, taken responsibly from Pixabay. Thank you again to Chaz Messman and Ryan Deeb from the Stars and Strikes, the Road to Qatar 2022. Thank you again for listening to this very special edition of The Intelligent World.